Now we're excited to be joined by Stephen Wagner of On3, and who covers the Miami Hurricanes, a obviously fun college football playoff run for Stephen Wagner and the Cane Sport crew. And Stephen, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, man. Good to see you.
Thanks, Billy. Good to see you again too. Yeah, still trying to come down a little bit from that national championship run. Man, things have been absolutely just beyond chaotic. Obviously, you had the championship on Monday, but now you are trying to squeeze a ton of portal recruiting and a ton of just recruiting in general into a very, very, very short window because obviously Miami's having to battle enrollment deadlines. And while other teams were out there being able to go ahead and get a jump on the guys that they're going to want in next year's class and the guys that they're going to want on next year's team via the portal, Miami's backs have been against the wall a little bit, and they've kind of been having to, really go all in and scrap with as many for as many guys as they've been able to. Obviously, they landed Damian Wilson on Wednesday. Thursday. That was a really, really big pickup. It was one that we kind of saw coming, but it still, addresses a huge position of need considering that Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor are going to be out the door. But now the Hurricanes are still in the mix, and this time in a court case with Darian Mensah, and it's looking like they'll probably try to make a run at Cooper Barcade at some point too. Things are definitely heating up.
And when we look at Miami and those needs, Damon Wilson is really expected to be a difference maker. He's a well-traveled now player who started at Georgia, ended up at Missouri. He's gone through a little bit of a legal battle with Georgia as well. So something about the Canes and those legal battles so far with portal guys. But nonetheless, he is a massive pickup on the defensive end side of things for this Miami team that really was able to have arguably the best defensive line in college football this year. And when you look at the rest of this roster, where are some of the other important holes that they're looking to fill as they get into these final days before that ad drop date?
Well, really, this isn't going to be a very big portal class for Miami at all. I've been telling our subscribers I expect the final number to be somewhere around 10-ish total guys out of the transfer portal, which really isn't anything whenever you consider teams like Texas are going to take 20, teams like LSU are probably taking somewhere in the 25 range. Ohio State's probably going to end up with around 15 or so. Texas Tech, they're doing another remake of the roster. I think they'll probably be at like 20 or 25 or somewhere around there. So Miami really is not going to need that many portal needs, or is not really going to turn to the portal for that many needs. There are going to be some positions where they maybe need a really good backup, or maybe they need a little bit of depth. One or two spots here where they do need a bona fide starter. Quarterback's obviously one of them, but collectively this is not going to be that big of a portal class, and a large reason for that is Miami's recruited the high school level really, really well over Cristobal's 4 years. You now have 4 full high school recruiting classes that you've been able to recruit. The guys that you recruited in your first full class in 2023 coming into this year, they are going to be seniors now. So the talent on your roster is now completely homegrown, and you can see their recruiting rankings from the 2023 season up until this year. They've consistently finished, top 5, top 10, top 15. They've really been up there. They feel pretty good about most of the guys that they've been able to get. And now it's kind of time for them to prove that, we are developing this talent. We are ready to go. Now, hopefully that won't turn out kind of the way that it did for Texas last year, whenever Texas felt really good about some of the homegrown talent and they chose to have a small portal class, and it turned out that they completely misevaluated their roster. But I think with where the Hurricanes sit, they feel really, really good about the guys that have been kind of developing behind the scenes. I think they feel really good about the depth. They've been patient with a lot of these guys, kind of allowing them to, have those reps in practice, stay away from media attention or critiques or anything like that. And I think that this year, it finally ought to be kind of their moment.
And one position that is turned into a portal position for Miami is quarterback. Emory Williams signed with East Carolina. He transferred out of the program. He went one and one as a starter, as a true freshman, but is now leaving the program, heading out with the news that Miami is pursuing Darian Mensah, and the expectation is at some point you would think Miami is going to get Darian Mensah and get him as their next quarterback. But what is your take on this legal battle just as a whole? Like, is this Duke trying to draw this out so he can't enroll for spring? How is Miami having to attack all of this?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and honest to God, this is something that you have to ask a legal expert about. And so
Yeah.
this has been kind of what we've been doing here over the last couple of days. Excuse me. I think probably what's going to end up being most likely what this is probably going to head towards is some sort of settlement. Duke's in kind of Mensah's in kind of a unique situation because Duke does own his NIL rights, which means that if Miami were to get him, they would have to pay him through their rev share or through the money that they're getting from the rev share agreement. Now, as far as if he'll actually be able to enroll, I think he probably will end up enrolling. Now, there's a temporary restraining order that says that he's able to actually go into the portal. He's able to actually go on visits, but he's not able to go ahead and enroll. And this is really playing out. I think this is probably going to end up playing out kind of similar to the Damon Williams thing, except I think in this instance, I feel like and this is just kind of my analysis of it. I don't know this as a fact. I'm not going to act like I'm reporting this as fact, but I think that Duke is kind of drawing this out because they want to get some sort of settlement. They want to guarantee that, hey, if we are going to lose our quarterback, if we're going to lose a player of extreme need who had already signed a contract with us, and who we were fully anticipating was going to be back next year, we are going to want some sort of we're going to want some sort of compensation. So I would keep kind of a close, or we're going to keep kind of a close eye on this, sort of as things move forward. Um, I I do think that Mensa will ultimately end up being a Kane, but man, this is just I mean, we're in unprecedented territory. I'm not really sure what to say here. This isn't really a position that I can say that I've been in before, covering Miami or covering. Well, excuse me. I guess there was the Xavier Lucas thing last year, but this is a situation that I think is even more different than that. I think he'll end up at Miami, but I mean, man, the path to get there is going to be really, really unique.
I think Duke is trying to obviously draw that line in the sand that Washington did. I think if Duke's path to winning on this one would be he doesn't enroll in the spring and then they recoup their money, right? Like, I don't think there's any world where this is like Damon Williams, who ends up being like, you know what? I got bad advice and I'm going back, right? I don't know. That's me. I trying to read that one. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that I was kind of sort of thinking along those lines too, and I saw a really really interesting thread on Twitter last night that kind of had me sort of rethink some things. And this attorney pointed out that they would probably, or Duke and Mensa and Miami and really everyone involved would probably rather that this doesn't end up getting into court, because now you're going to be asking a judge to determine if these contracts that they sign are actually enforceable. And if they are actually enforceable, that probably means that they're going to have to formally be classified as university employees, which means that you're classifying these guys because a judge told you to do so, not because you were able to do it on your own timeline, and you're in control of everything. Yeah, I think that that's something that neither Miami nor Duke, sort of from a university standpoint, really want. Obviously, that's kind of been the thing that's kind of been the thing that the NCAA has been trying to avoid for a really, really long time. At a certain point, I kind of feel like it's inevitable. I mean, we are ultimately going to get there at some point, but in terms of when we get there, I'm not really sure, and I don't think that universities really want to get there now because so far, sort of the NCAA's approach to this whole thing has just been, well, we're going to hold our breath and we're going to wait for Congress to step in and say us and give us an antitrust exemption. And Congress is simply not doing that. I mean, this went to the Supreme Court. It was struck down in a unanimous verdict. I mean, how many times in today's day and age of politics do we hear about a unanimous verdict where every single person agrees? That should kind of tell you something, that everyone agreed that this was egregious, and sort of the current political state and climate that we're in as far as Supreme Court justices go. But um, yeah, I do think that at the end of the day, he'll end up at Miami. But again, like I just said a minute ago, I think the road that they're going to take to get there is really going to be it's going to be kind of unique. And I think that this is ultimately going to end up getting settled outside of court, because I think if he ends up returning to Duke, that means Duke would probably need a judge to rule in their favor. And like I said, then you let the cat out of the bag with, I think, a ton of other things. So I think this probably ends in him going to Miami. But I've made sure not to go ahead and enter a crystal ball or an RPM pick or any sort of formal prediction for Mensa to end up at Kane, just in case something shakes out a different way in court.
Do want to shout out Canes 266 and Terp 305. Look, on his tampering comment, only tampering if Miami gets a player. No, like that's not it. There's no problem with tampering on this show because the rules allow it. The issue is, are these contracts going to be, if you sign a guy for multiple years and you invest in him, is that going to be the case? And I think that's where college football fans are kind of like, all right, we want some sort of maybe roster. Like, don't you want to get to know the players like we all used to know the players year in, year out? That's kind of what a lot of people miss. And to Don 2260's point, Washington didn't even have to file a lawsuit. No, they were going to. And then Damon Williams said, I don't want to fight that. I want to go back to Washington. Again, he got bad advice. Let's move on from Darian Mensah, though, because Miami continues to make a lot of moves here. And Cooper Barcade is one that would not require a lawsuit here to get him on board, but is a really, really talented wide receiver who's got proven ACC production. Where would he fit in alongside, Malachi Toney and that wide receiver group for Miami that did see JoJo Trader enter the transfer portal as well, which I feel like could have seen the JoJo Trader move coming from a mile away too.
Yeah, I think with the Barcade, it's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, Miami's going to be a team to watch here. I mean, it 1,000% makes the most sense. If his quarterback is going to go to the portal, I mean, how much sense would it make for his top receiver option to go ahead and follow him? Now, of course, some other schools are going to be involved, but if Miami gets Mensah, I would imagine that those end up being a package deal. And man, Barcade is a really, really, really freaking good player. I mean, when I was kind of looking at his film, it's like, man, like this is kind of the player that they thought that JoJo Trader was going to become. And he was him last year. I think he had something like 70 catches, 93 targets, 5 drops. I was looking at his PFF stuff yesterday. Separates really, really well. Not really one of these guys who's just going to have the straight line vertical speed to outrun you just in a straight line, and he's probably not going to be one of these guys who's going to win contested 50-50 jump balls every single time. But what he does really, really well is separate and catch the ball. And, that it's kind of the thing that Bill Belichick used to always look for. Hey, I don't care as much about your size, I don't care as much about your speed, your draft grades, all of this stuff, but can you separate and can you catch the football? And those are two things that I think Barcade does better than, just as well as, or better than, I mean, anyone in the ACC. I think he would fit in really, really well as either an X or a Z receiver. Miami's going to lose a okay amount of talent or an okay amount of production in their receiver room this year with CJ Daniels and Keelan Marion. off to the NFL draft. Obviously, they're returning Malachi Tony. And then at the other receiver spot, I think that you're probably hoping that one of the other two portal guys that you brought in, maybe Cam Vaughn or Vandrevius Jacobs, or maybe some of these sophomores, redshirt freshmen, or even true freshmen are able to go ahead and step up at the other receiver spot. I think that it's possible again that along with Malachi Tony, Miami has two transfer receivers on the perimeter. I could see Cam Vaughn ending up starting on the perimeter. I could also see Vandrevius Jacobs from South Carolina, finding a way onto the field. But I could also see maybe a Samarian Wingo or a Dalen Upshaw, or a Josh Moore or a Milan Perez or a Vance Spafford or one of these other guys that they've brought up through high school recruiting. It wouldn't stun me if one of those guys just ends up winning the other job outright. But I think that Vaughn kind of is exactly what this offense needs, and that's kind of a savvy, experienced receiver on the outside. They got that in C.J. Daniels this year, but I think that Barcade is just far, far more advanced at this point in his career than Daniels was. He is certainly a lot more productive. He had more than 1,000 yards receiving last season. Tony, I think, had around 1,200 or so yards receiving last season. And obviously, you put those two guys on the field. Probably pretty unlikely that both of them end up being 1,000-yard receivers, and there's going to be a little bit of a target share between the two, or there's going to be it'll be a question, what the target share between the two is going to look like. But certainly you have to think that having Tony there is going to ease the burden on Barcade, and having Barcade there is going to ease the load on Tony. And you hope that third receiver there is really able to find his way sort of into the mix and really fit into the offense as well. Overall, I think that Miami's in really, really good position to significantly upgrade their receiver room last year. Even though this year it was solid, I think next year could be really, really elite.
Can Miami land Colorado offensive tackle Jordan Seaton? What's the latest on your end?
Man, mining for Seaton, you might as well be trying to dig for diamonds in Fort Lauderdale. His camp has been completely tight. They are being very, very intentional to make sure that nothing gets out before they want it to get out. I think kind of the case with most of us right now is, college staffers are making sure that there are not going to be any leaks about transfer portal players, especially as most of these teams are trying to prevent their own players from hitting the transfer portal. So I think that Miami absolutely can land Jordan Seaton. If I'm just giving you my analysis, yeah, Miami's in this thing. Miami is going to be in this thing, especially with Markel Bell, their right tackle, now off to the NFL. Miami's going to have a little bit of a budget to go into the portal and spend on a right tackle. And, Miami absolutely could have landed Josiah Thompson from South Carolina earlier this month. And ultimately, he ended up deciding to go ahead and go back to South Carolina. And, coincidentally, not too long after that, Jordan Seaton decided that he was going into the portal, and Miami threw their hat in the ring. And I think that the Hurricanes really are going to have a very real shot here. We know that they're going to have the resources to do it. On the NIL side, I think they're probably in as good a position as they've ever been in. But then obviously, not Colorado, Oregon and LSU are both going to be really, really heavy bidders for Seaton. Oregon really needs help on that offensive line. I know Lane Kiffin, he's getting greedy in the portal, man, but damn, is he good at it. He's brought in a great portal class already. I think getting someone like Seaton would sort of be the cherry on top. I kind of feel like with someone like Seaton, if he wants the bag, then he will go to whoever the highest bidder is. But man, whenever you look at Miami's offensive line this past year and the level of coaching that they received from Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, if you're really seeking level of coaching and how to improve your draft stock and all those things, I really have a hard time seeing how you don't take a very, very long and serious look at Miami.
And you could have one of the best quarterbacks in the country back there as just we'll wrap up with this. Just a quick comment here. Duke quarterback Darian Mensah has filed an emergency motion for reconsideration of the temporary restraining order against him, requesting his preliminary injunction hearing be moved from February 2nd to Friday. That's today, January 23rd. The court said, of course, this week that he can't enroll at another school before the injunction hearing. So he's trying to move this thing along, and we'll see if he's going to have Jordan Seaton, but he will have really talented offensive line nonetheless, the way Mario Cristobal is recruiting it. I saw Jackson Cantwell hanging out there at the national championship game as an early enrollee. So plenty to like about the direction of Miami's offensive line. Stephen Wagner of On3, Kane Sport, thanks for joining us this morning, man.
Thanks, Bill.